Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest here on a sunny September day in the center of Europe. I hope everybody is having a good week so far. We're looking forward to a fantastic weekend, of course. Hi Bekjan, hi Jainil, Rajvil, Abhishek. Nice to see many of our members in the class on time. This is a members chat class. Everybody is welcome to watch. It's a good idea to watch because after this class, we will have an all chat class, which will be a continuation of this essay that we're starting in this class. So to get the foundations, to get a good idea of how to plan and structure the essay, this is a good class to watch. Students, this class is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Definitely check us out there. And for general IELTS, visit us at gieltshelp.com. On both of our websites, we have lots and lots of materials for you, including original practice exams, interactive courses, and videos, HD videos, over 100 of them for all sections of the IELTS. And if you have questions, you can always send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. Hi Milind, hi Moni, nice to see you in class. Students, our websites look like this. This is the academic one here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join us there. And this is the general one with the green background. You can click that big red button to join us on our general site. Okay. Now, very important note. So today we have this Task 2 essay start and Task 2 essay finish class. So 2 classes with a 30-minute break in between. And then tomorrow, no classes. I'm away tomorrow on a bit of a trip, and so I won't be here. I will be back on Wednesday, the usual time, and then we'll have a full week of classes. So next week we'll do our Q&A session, members, so that we don't miss out on that class, all right? So keep that in mind. No class tomorrow, but I'm back on Wednesday with the regular schedule. All right. So let's get into this task 2. One of my students sent me an email with this task 2, and I thought this was kind of a good question to go over because it's a little bit unique, and you're going to see why. So it's definitely another kind of challenging question. Task 2 essay questions tend to be challenging. You need to think, okay? So they're not just for English, but they're also for thinking. So how you think about ideas, how you present your ideas as well has a big influence on your performance for these questions. Okay, so first things first, let's carefully read the question. So you're already warmed up a bit at this point because you did task 1 first. Okay, make sure you do task 1 first. Jainil's like, I sent that one. Thanks, Jainil, for sending this question. It's a good one. Okay. So here we go. Let's read it. IELTS Task 2 Writing. You should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Some people believe that a greater difference in age between parents and children is more beneficial than less of a difference. Do you think the advantages of a greater age difference outweigh the disadvantage? Okay. So it's an advantage, disadvantage, and I think one of our other members or students was also asking about this kind of essay, the advantage outweigh the disadvantage, okay? So this is a good question, and IELTS, maybe many of you noticed already, they tend to ask questions for Task 2 which are pertinent for our current generation or our current time, okay? Because in this case, I'm sure many of you realize that in a lot of the world, there tend to be young parents, parents who are having their children in their 20s, and these days it's also common for a lot of parents to be having their children well into their 30s and even into their 40s. So this is kind of a newer trend than in the past, where in the past, most people, if not everybody, had children before they were 30. Is everybody kind of on the same page there? Everybody understands why IELTS comes up with a question like this. Now, of course, this might be more common in some countries like the UK or Canada or the US, but I think this trend is becoming more common in other parts of the world as well, where parents are having kids at a later age. And the IELTS is provocative. They want you to think about this. This is an official IELTS question. So they want people to think about these concepts. And I can see that a lot of you, Janelle, Natalie, Milland, Preeti, you're all saying, yeah, definitely. I hear that. You know, in my grandparents' time, they had 3 kids by the time they were 25, and now they have 1 kid when they're 35. So, yeah, it's a big difference. Okay, so they're thinking questions, and they're important questions. So, it's good. All right. Okay. So, first step, of course, is just to paraphrase the question, not to start the introduction, because just paraphrasing is not enough for a good introduction. But we want to paraphrase this question just so that we can get some more thoughts going around this idea. We can come up with some useful vocabulary and so on. Millen said, my grandfather had 5 children before 30. Yeah, exactly, Millen. And now in our generation, people have maybe 1 child before they're 30, if that. So, yeah. Okay. So let's paraphrase this. Write the question in your own words, start to formulate some ideas, and then we'll get into a little bit of deeper planning. Okay? All right, here we go. So I'm going to do the same. All right. So there's my paraphrase. Took my time. It's absolutely okay here, students, to take a little bit of extra time to really think through the question. You're not wasting time here. You're actually making good use of time, because the more deeply you think about each of these words and you start to visualize, the better you will be able to answer the question. Okay, so Beckjan says certain individuals feel that a greater inequality between guardians of kids in terms of their age is advantageous than a smaller one. Do you believe that the benefits of not having a balanced age difference between guardians and their offspring is greater than the deficits? Yeah, Beckjan, okay, good. I made a few corrections to make it a little bit more natural, but very, very close, and quite a good paraphrase in the sense, Beckjan, that it's very different from the original sentence. So that was good, and I'm sure that because of that, you are thinking quite deeply about the question. Okay, Rajveer says, certain individuals ascertain that a significant age difference between parents and children has more benefits. Do you believe that this greater age gap has more benefits than deficits? Very nice paraphrasing, Rajveer. Very accurate. Good use of vocabulary. Well done. Janil says, some individuals think that a considerable variation in age between parents and kids is more helpful than a slight difference. Short of a difference, Janil, is a little bit awkward, but everything you wrote before that is really nicely phrased and well written. So just the last couple of words there, Janil, they're a bit awkward, but the start is very good. Okay. Millen says, some individuals are of the thought that a greater age gap between them and their children is far better than having lesser of a gap. Yeah, very good. So nice use of the word gap by a couple students to indicate the difference. Yeah. A nice high-level word for gap is segregation. Okay. That also works really well. All right. Oas says, some individuals think it is better that there's a big difference in age between parents and kids than a little one. What do you think are the advantages, and are they more than the disadvantages in this case? Okay, not bad, Oas. A couple of grammatical mistakes there, but otherwise quite good. Abhishek says, certain individuals have faith that a bigger variance in age among adult and young people is extra helpful when parenting than a smaller difference. Fewer is not right here, Abhishek. Do you think the benefits of this larger age difference overshadow the deficits? That's really nice paraphrasing, Abhishek. Do you think the benefits of a larger age difference overshadow the deficits? Yeah, it's a nice paraphrasing there. I'll put it up here so everybody can learn it. Overshadow the deficits. Okay. Overshadow is a perfect synonym for outweigh. Okay, so very nicely done there, Abhishek, using that. Okay. Preeti says, certain individuals think that a bigger age difference between parents and children is more beneficial than a small age gap between them. Okay, you don't need the rather, Preeti. Parmar says, few individuals deem that a considerable age difference between guardians and their juveniles is more beneficial as compared to being closer in age. Not bad, Parmar. A couple of slight word form and grammar mistakes, but overall good. Parmar, you don't need the word maximum. Okay, really nice. Students, hats off. Look at all of you paraphrase in your own way. So all of you did quite a good job. Some of you almost near perfect, some of you perfect, a few of you a couple mistakes, but I can see that they're all original, okay, and that's really, really good to see. All right, so what's the topic here? What are we talking about? So the next step always is to identify the topic. So what are we talking about here? And you should be able to answer this very simply, okay? Not age difference, not so much difference in parent age and kids. Kind of, you're kind of on the right track, but it's just two words here. Keep it simpler. I think you can simplify this even more than difference between parents' age and their children. So you can even simplify this more. Parents and kids, Beckjohn, not bad. Okay. The age difference is a little bit almost more of the controlling idea. I would although it might not seem perfectly accurate, I would simplify this as parents' age. That's how I would do it. Okay. I think it's intrinsic to this this phrase that we're talking about the actual age of the parent in regard to their kid's age, the parent's age, so the age of the parent, right? Natalie says parenting, and that's actually not bad, Natalie. So I think that would be a very good alternative for the topic, because in essence, Natalie, you're right. We are talking about parenting because parenting, according to what we believe in this question, differs depending on the age gap between the parent and the child, right? So the parenting of younger parents versus the parenting of older parents. So parenting is not a bad way to identify the topic at all, Natalie. I would agree. Okay. So what are the controlling ideas here? Or what's the controlling idea? Okay. So Preeti says effects of parenting age on a child. Kind of. Milland, experience is too general. That would be far too general of a topic. Okay. So what's the controlling idea? What are we actually talking about? Have a look at the original question. When you're thinking about the topic and the controlling idea, you should always look at the controlling idea. Topic, I said parents' age, but you could see the topic here. Difference in age between parents and children. That would be the topic as well. Okay. Yeah, so Janil says more difference is more beneficial or less, right? So the controlling idea comes from here. Do you think the advantages of a greater age difference outweigh the disadvantage? So this really is your controlling idea, this full sentence, but of course try to simplify that. So the controlling idea is the advantage more than the disadvantage of having a big age difference, okay? So that would be the most accurate. So is or are the advantages of having a greater age difference between parents and their children more than the disadvantages? Okay. So that would be the question, right? Okay. All right. Good. So let's see. Here we go. Let's try to define this. I think defining the topic here is really, really important because we might have some really different ideas of this topic, the parent's age, right? Depending on culture and our own experience. What is the average age difference between parents and children? So how would you quantify that? This is where quantifying would become very important. I'm really curious what all of you are going to answer for these questions. So, because of course many of you are from different cultures here. So, what do you think is the average age difference of parents and children? So what would be considered a young parent, the average parent, and an older parent? Okay, you can think about it that way as well. So what do you think? What would you go with? Young parent, average parent, old parent? What would you number that as? What would be your quantifiable measure of that? And I think it's really important to get that idea so that you can clearly explain this concept. Okay, so Rajveer says a young parent would be an age difference of 20. So somebody having a child at the age of 20 would be considered a young parent. Now, of course, we might have a little bit of difference here if we're talking about men and women, right? So there could be differences there as well. So the average parent, Abhishek is saying 25 to 30. Natalie says 18, 30, and 40. Begjan says 23 for a young parent. Millen says average parent 25 to 30. Okay. Now, this is important because this becomes a part of your essay, right? So in the background definitions here, we're going to need this information. Okay. And an older parent, so somebody that's a little bit older. So Abhishek says 35 to 40. Sure. Okay. So older parent, 35 to even, let's say, 45, right? Let's give it a nice range there. Sure. Okay. What would be the next question here? So thinking about the questions to be able to plan your essay and have good content is really important. So now we figured out what is a parent's age difference between their child, right? Because that's not just the parent's age, but when they're having their child. So that's the age difference. Okay. So if you have a child born when you're 35, then obviously the age difference between you and your child is 35 years. Okay. So here we have an idea now of young parent, average parent, old parent. And you'd be surprised, students, how many people will write a whole essay on this question without actually quantifying the age of the parent. Can you visualize, or can you imagine how confusing it might be for some people to read a whole essay on this topic if the writer doesn't actually state the age of the parent? Okay? I hope everybody's kind of clear on why quantifying information is such a very important part of good writing in many cases. Okay, can everybody give me kind of like a little thumbs up or yes? Because I see that in many essays where students will write a whole essay on a topic like this, and they won't include what they think is an older parent. And it's kind of really confusing to read the essay because it's like I'm trying to guess, is this a 25-year-old parent or a 45-year-old parent? So who are they talking about, right? Okay, so quantifying is really important. Okay, all right, good. Okay, so Rajveer says, why is there a greater age difference between parents and children? I agree, Rajveer. That's a really good question to ask. Yeah, that's the next question for sure. So asking good questions is the key to a good essay. A lot of students think having good ideas is the key to a good essay, but it's wrong, or having good answers. Having good questions is the key to a good essay. So why is there a greater age difference between parents and children? That is a very good question. Okay, so what are some answers to that? Why? So why are we living in a world where the age difference between parent and child has, on average, significantly increased from previous generations? And I think there are a few reasons for this, so try to visualize it. Think about your own situation. Think about your parents' situation. Think about your plans for the future if you don't have children yet. And then you'll probably come up with some really clever ideas of why these greater age differences started to come about. Okay, so Rajveer says parents choose to settle in their careers. So sure, okay. Preeti says unemployment. Bekchan says due to career. So Millen says parents want to make more money and establish themselves. Stable careers first. Okay, keep thinking. I think you have a couple, but I don't think, so financial stability is definitely one. I think there's more there. Hi Hassan, welcome. So I think there's more there. So Ois says because kids need people with more life experience. Yeah, so parents want more life experience, sure. Yeah. A lot of parents say, hey, I want to travel first. I want to do a lot of other activities before I have children. Okay, Parmar, nice. Notice that word that Parmar is using. I was hoping a student would use that. So, Yeah, parents' priorities are different than in the past. This is a really good word to have in mind for this essay, priorities. In the past, people had kids first, and oftentimes before they finished school or before they had their careers, because they had a different set of priorities. Okay? So, different set or order of priorities. If you're not familiar with the word priority, it means what comes first, second, third in the level of importance, okay? All right. And one that I haven't seen come up yet, but I think it's very pertinent, it's important, and I'll add that to it, is becoming independent in society takes more years of education and training. I think that's a big one, okay? In our grandparents' or great-grandparents' time, you're 16 years old, you go out into the cold, hard world, and you'll survive. They'll give you a job, things will happen for you, and you can become independent. Try that today, and you will become a street kid. Unfortunately, that happens to people. So it's extremely difficult as a 16-year-old in the modern world to go out onto the streets away from the shelter of the home and become independent and employed, okay? That's just unheard of. 80, 90, 100 years ago, that would be common. That would be common practice, right? When I was a kid, I moved out at the age of 18, and it was still normal back in the late 90s. But these days, kids stay home till like 22, 23, okay? Just the cost of living. So it takes longer in life to become independent, and there's more years of education and training, right? People now basically need to finish post-secondary school to get any kind of job. High school diplomas are not enough, right? So, okay, so these are all happening quickly. So, and this is how it happens as well, right? So, how does this gap or this larger age gap happen? People go to university, travel the world, get a job, and so on, right? So that's basically how it happens, okay? All right, let's go on to the questions for the controlling ideas. So what would be a good question here for the controlling idea? Okay, so again, we're thinking here. We're trying to get ideas quickly. And all of this, students, in the real exam is happening in about 3 to 5 minutes, and you're only writing down a couple of the key ideas. Most of the questions are just coming about in your mind, and most of the answers, okay? So Romaine says that raising children requires more today than before. Yeah, resources are more limited, right? Absolutely. Okay. People are becoming a lot more choosy when they're deciding on their life partner, Beckjohn. That's absolutely another one as well. Okay, Beckjohn says that's the good question to ask is what are the advantages of a greater age gap? Yeah. Okay, good. So what are the advantages of a greater age gap? Yeah, and a lot of you picked that up, right? So what are the advantages? Give me some ideas. What is better about having a greater age gap between fathers, mothers, and their children? What are some ideas that come to mind there for you? I'm sure there's some. Again, visualize it. Think about it. Okay. Yeah, so Parmar, you're on the same track as well. So, okay, Ois says they tend to have more money. And why is that good, Ois? So why is having more money good? Okay, Beckjohn says more experience. Ferdov says they're more patient. So, okay. I'm not sure about patience. I've heard that sometimes younger parents will have more patience. It's an interesting one. But more money is definitely arguable, and experience is absolutely. So experience 100%. Having more money, I would say, is 80% true. Yep. Okay, how's the sound now? Is the sound back? Are we good? Yeah, it's because my battery died in my wireless pack. That happens. I talk a lot. I kill the battery. Okay, thanks for your patience. Parents have more money, experience, and patience. When you're choosing your key points for argument, make sure to weigh the validity of your key points. So how true is it? Okay, so always think about how true is it? Okay. Janiel says better understanding. Instead of understanding, maybe empathy. Okay. And there's still one here, one big one. I don't see that one yet. So older parents might have something else that younger parents don't have. Again, visualize it. Visualize it. So it's not a guarantee, but there's a good chance that an older parent will have more of this. Not maturity is with experience. So experience and maturity are not mutually exclusive. Maturity and experience or wisdom would all be the same. So careful. Make sure that you don't accidentally have two key points which are the same. Experience, wisdom, maturity, that's all the same. Okay? Okay. If I'm a younger parent and I'm running to school and then I'm going to work to support my family, then what might I have not so much of compared to an older parent who might be doing the same, but there's a chance that they're not? Okay. Abhishek right away, he's like, of course, time. Time, right? Young parents tend to have less time because they're still so busy setting up life, right? So have more money and time. Okay. When you're thinking about your key points in the IELTS, students, always keep in mind time as one of the big ones, because time is one of the great equalizers of human beings, okay? Money is the currency that we have, that we earn, that we spend. We know how much we have in our bank account. And time is our greatest currency. We spend it. We don't really make it. We can try to save it, and we don't know how much of it we have, but it's our most valuable currency. So always think of time and money. Okay, time and money are often good points when you're thinking about social situations. Okay, so that's just a tip for your IELTS exam. Okay, so here's a little tip. Time and money are often good points to think of whenever the question is dealing with a social construct. Okay, that makes sense? Right? So time and money. Okay, time and money. All right, good. Okay, what are the disadvantages? I'm sure many of you would realize that's the next question because we're weighing these two. So what are the disadvantages of a greater age gap? Okay. So what might be something that we say, well, it's not as good. Okay, physical weakness, Preeti says. So less energy. Yeah, less energy. Absolutely. You hit that one really quickly, Preeti. Very good. Physical weakness, we can translate that as energy. So time, money. Third one, energy. Energy, of course, is another great divide, right? Okay, Jainil says less years of support. Yeah, so less energy, less support, meaning in the long run, right? Because the parents will get older. So, if you're having a child when you're 40, that means by the time they get to 20, you're 60. You're almost retired. So that's true. Okay. Millen said generational gap leading to tension. So empathy or sympathy. Empathy. So when we get older, we tend to forget what it's like to be a child. So it's more difficult to empathize with them. Okay. Yeah, less understanding or an inability to understand them or more tension is less empathy. Everybody understands the word empathy? Empathy means to be able to understand the situation of the other person. Okay, that's what empathy means. Okay. All right, so less energy, less support in the long run, less empathy for that child. Sure, those are all possible negatives. So, sympathize, Rajveer, is very similar to empathy. Sympathy means that we have a different experience, but we can imagine it. Okay. All right. So less empathy. Empathy could be with technology as well. So a lot of times you hear parents complaining that their kids spend way too much time on their phones and their tablets, and it's because they can't empathize with the situation or their generation of needing that technology. Okay, so fine. We've definitely thought of some good points here. Now comes the big question. What's the big question? So what do we ask now? What's the big question? The big question is, are the advantages more than the disadvantages? So, are the advantages more than the disadvantages? So, is it better to have more money, more time, perhaps more experience, more empathy? So those ones we're not that sure about, right? Or is it better to have more energy, be able to support our children for a longer time, or more empathy? What do you think? So we have to choose here, right? So the advantages are more or less, or we don't know. What do you think? So Janil says, saying that the advantages are more than the disadvantages. Think that through. So Rajveer says advantages are more. Janil says advantages are more. Okay. Bekjan says advantages are more. Okay, Abhishek says, yeah, I think you could do that. So I think you could write advantages are more, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm an older parent, or maybe it's because I'm a little bit older than probably most of you. But my answer would be I don't know. Now, if you went with advantages are more and then explain it, it's probably easier. Oa says, I think the advantages are slightly more. And Millen says, yeah, I don't know too. Okay. So if your answer is I don't know, then you should go with no here. Okay. So if you say, well, I don't know, because it's really hard to explain that having less energy as an older parent is not so bad, or being able to support my child emotionally in the long run is not so bad. I think some people would say, well, are you sure about that? I mean, that has a lot of value to give long-term emotional support and to have long-term energy for your children. Okay, so yeah, Preeti says, yeah, I'm also confused. So just for fun this time, we're going to choose the side of no, the advantages don't necessarily outweigh the disadvantages. Okay? Yeah, so Ois says, can we not just mention both? And yes, we can, Ois, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So for now, we're going to go with the concept of the advantages are not necessarily greater than the disadvantages. Okay, so give me a thesis based on this information that expresses this idea. Okay, so I'm challenging you today a little bit, and I think we can write a great essay this way. Okay, and this is going to be a very honest essay in the sense. I mean, you could do, I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, or they're more, but let's do a very honest essay here where we're going to basically say the advantages are not necessarily greater than the disadvantages of having a large age gap between parents and children. Okay, so give me a thesis sentence with this idea. All right. Let's see. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start writing the thesis. I want us to move along here, but while you're doing that, I'll give you a little bit of silence while I compose as well. So let me look at the original question first. Okay, it's do you think the advantages? So it's really important. All right. So there is my thesis for the introduction. Okay, and then we'll get going with our introductory paragraph here. Which has the hook, the background, and thesis. All right. So Millen says the positives do not really outweigh the negatives, as intensity of the disadvantages are way more significant. For example, having emotional understanding in the long run is more beneficial than money. Okay, Millen, good. It's not bad. I think we can work on it a bit, but you have the right idea. Ois says, although it is good that people have kids at an early age, it is also included that there's a difficulty in life because of experience and money. Ois, never use although together with but. It creates a double negative. It's very confusing. So Ois, when you use although, you just use a comma between the dependent and independent clause. You never go although and but together. Okay. Hassan says having a great gap in age between parents and children enables parents to secure their offspring necessities better, but have less time and energy to spend with children. Hassan, not bad. So you're presenting some points, but you haven't really answered the question of, is it better or worse, right? So always think, Hassan, of the original question. I know you came a little bit late into the class, but the original question is, do you think the advantages of a greater age difference outweigh, so they're more than the disadvantages? You have to answer that in the thesis, okay? Rajveer says, I do not believe that the benefits of a greater age segregation, such as more money and time between parents and children, are more than the deficits, such as lesser energy and empathy. Very nice, Rajveer. You're completely synonymous with my thesis as well. Very good. Bagjan says, certain individuals believe the advantages of a greater age gap between parents and kids is a drawback. However, I believe the opposite due to less support and energy. I'm a little bit confused by that, Bagjan. Let me try to read that again. Okay, yeah, I see, Bagjan. I see how you did that. Okay, so you're actually going for the negative. I'm going for neither. Okay, so I neither think that they outweigh, the advantages outweigh the negatives, nor do I think the negatives outweigh the advantages. So I'm just saying that the advantages don't outweigh the negatives. Okay, all right. So here we go. This is my thesis. I do not believe that the advantages of a greater age gap between children and parents, such as having more time and money, necessarily overshadow the disadvantages of having less energy and empathy. Okay, hopefully everybody's clear on that thesis now. Let's get into the introduction. So this should go nice and smooth. Give me a hook. So give me a nice hook. And this hook, in some sense, so you need to definitely have the topic in there. And the hook in this case might even be a little bit of the background or the definition. Okay? It's okay to do that. So it's okay to have a bit of definition in the hook. Yeah, OS, you could do that, absolutely. So you could write body paragraph 1, the advantages. That's what I'm going to do, right? And the reason I'm going to do that, OS, so the reason I will talk about the advantages, body paragraph 1, more time and money, first, and then the disadvantages, less energy and empathy, second, is because that is logical for making the argument that the advantages don't outweigh the disadvantages. Okay? All right. So I'm going to write the hook as well, just so we can kind of move along. And then you write your hook, and we'll see what goes on. We'll see if they kind of line up or if we're in the same realm of hooking or catching our reader. Okay. That's mine. Okay. Rajveer says, parenting has changed significantly in the past couple of decades. Yeah, it's good. Okay, that'll work. Ferdov says, in the last decades, parents tend to plan children later than ever before. Yeah, Ferdov's, that's very nice. It's synonymous to mine. Moni says, parenthood at an older age is a bit challenging. Moni, that's an argument. Don't introduce an argument in your hook, Moni, because it's too sudden for the reader. Okay? If I read that, Moni, like parenthood at an older age is a bit challenging, I would kind of scratch my head and go, really? Is that true? Why are you telling me that right away? So don't have such a strong argument. Instead, just state a general fact about the topic. Like in current generations, it is much more common to have children at an older age than in the past, which I started the class with, right? We all said that we agree that it's much more common these days for parents to be older than in the past. That's a simple way to put it as well. Okay. Hassan says there's always a gap between fathers, mothers, and their children. Yeah, I think that's okay, Hassan, but I do think that's a bit too general. It's like, like, where are you going with this, right? So you kind of want to show a bit of direction, Hassan, in your hook. If you're stating a really general fact, it doesn't really make it interesting, right? Abhishek says, in today's competitive era, parents are different with old age in the past. Okay, Abhishek, again, that's a little bit unclear. I don't quite see the topic there. Okay. Preeti says, today's parenting is quite delayed than compared to our grandparents' time. Yeah, Preeti, you're definitely on the right track there. Okay. Bekjan says, these days it is common to give birth to children at an old age. Yeah, Bekjan, that's good. That works. Okay, background. So in the past, most young adults became parents in their early to mid 20s, as where these days many people start to have children in their late 30s and early 40s. Okay, so that's kind of that quantitative definition, right? So in the past, most young adults became parents in their early to mid 20s, as where these days many people start to have children in their late 30s and early 40s. This age difference has a significant impact on both parents and children, as well as society. Okay, so the importance of the question, why are we talking about this? Well, clearly having a larger age gap between parents and children will have an effect on the very nature and fabric of society, right? So it will impact children's development, as well as parents' life, and overall it will impact society. And then all I do now is I just grab my thesis statement and I plug it into the end of my introduction. So this would be your high band introduction for this essay. Okay, let me read it and then see if it makes sense. Now, one good step to take here, members, is just to kind of read the question and then read your introduction and see how accurate it is. So IELTS Task 2 writing, you should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Some people believe that a greater difference in age between parents and children is more beneficial than less of a difference. Do you think the advantages of a greater age difference outweigh the disadvantage? In current generations, it is much more common to have children at an older age than in the past. In the past, most young adults became parents in their early to mid 20s, as where these days many people start to have children in their late 30s and early 40s. This age difference has a significant impact on both parents and children, as well as society. I do not believe that the advantages of a greater age gap between children and parents, such as having more time and money, necessarily overshadow the disadvantages of having less energy and empathy. All right, so does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. Will I be able to write a couple of good paragraphs in conclusion? I think so. So let's do that in 30 minutes. Okay. And I can see a lot of great writing in the chat, students. And that's fantastic. And we're going to pick this up very, very soon in 30 minutes. We're going to continue this with everyone, where everybody gets to join in on the chat. So I'll be back in 30 minutes, okay? And we'll get into body paragraph 1, 2, and the conclusion and develop this essay further. So good job, Milind, Moni, Ois, Bekjan, Preeti. Nice to have you later. You know what they say, Preeti, better late than never, so it's good. Thanks, Rajveer and Abhishek. See you all shortly. For all of you watching, make sure to check us out at aehelp.com and glshelp.com as well. See you in half an hour to finish this essay. Bye for now.